Have you ever wondered what supernatural horror treasures were quietly buried when giant blockbusters took over the 1970s? These films carried danger, mystery, and eerie visions that echoed far beyond their release year. Today, we unlock 15 supernatural horror classics that were lost in the blockbuster boom, and you will never look at 70s horror the same way again. Number 15. The Asphyx, 1972. The Asphyx arrived with the reputation of a strange, overlooked British experiment. It was not a box office hit, nor a celebrated masterpiece. Instead, it existed in an eerie space between science fiction and supernatural mythology. Many dismissed it as too weird for the mainstream, yet those who discovered it felt the unsettling power of its idea. A creature lurking at the border of death and the human obsession to trap the untrappable. The story follows a Victorian scientist who becomes convinced that every person is shadowed by a dark entity at the exact moment they die. This entity, the Asphyx, can supposedly be captured. So begins his descent into a dangerous quest to make himself and his loved ones immortal. What follows is a chilling journey filled with experiments, strange lights, and near-death moments that feel both scientific and ghostly. The film refuses to settle into one predictable category. That confusion became both its curse and its charm. But here is the twist. Rumors spread that the studio had no idea how to market the film. Some whispered about arguments behind closed doors. Others claimed the script went through rushed revisions during production. Critics did not know how to classify it, which meant audiences never got a clear message. And in a decade ruled by big flashy releases, this quiet British oddity vanished almost overnight. Yet the legacy of the Asphyx did not die. Long after the blockbuster tidal wave faded, a new generation rediscovered it through cult screenings and early home video. Today, it is seen as a bold attempt to blend Victorian dread with philosophical horror. A reminder that fear does not always come from demons or ghosts. Sometimes it comes from the human refusal to accept mortality. Its presence in horror history is a whisper from the shadows, urging us to question what waits at the edge of life. Number 14. The House That Screamed, 1970. When The House That Screamed returned to American screens, it carried the reputation of a foreign thriller, too quiet for the rising blockbuster age. It was a chilling Spanish tale that leaned more on atmosphere than spectacle. As loud, big-budget films dominated the cultural conversation, this haunting story of a remote boarding school and its dark secrets was drowned out before most viewers ever heard of it. The film opens with an isolated all-girls academy hidden behind cold stone walls. Every hallway is strict, every rule enforced with unsettling discipline. But beneath the structure lies a rising tension. Girls begin disappearing. Whispers spread at night. A caretaker watches too closely. A son is kept hidden from the world. The House That Screamed builds dread, slowly through footstep shadows, and the sense that something terrible has been stitched beneath the school routine. There is no need for chaotic visual effects. Its fear comes from what you imagine happening just out of view. Behind the scenes, the film faced its own suppression. Some distributors believed American audiences would not embrace a European-style ghostly mystery. Others argued that its pacing felt old-fashioned in a decade, racing toward bigger thrills. There were even quiet rumors that certain scenes were trimmed to fit regional demands, which left some viewers confused by the ending. Studio decisions did not help it reach the audience it deserved, and the wave of massive hits arriving in the early 70s pushed it further into obscurity. But the legacy of The House That Screamed has grown in silence. Modern viewers have rediscovered its craftsmanship and praised its slow burn tension. It is now studied as an early example of psychological supernatural horror, where every room hides a secret pain. The film stands today not as a lost relic, but as a reminder that fear does not need explosions to echo in the mind. Sometimes a whisper behind a locked door can haunt far longer than any blockbuster spectacle. Number 13. The Mephisto Waltz, 1971. The Mephisto Waltz arrived with a strange reputation. Critics called it stylish, yet confusing, beautiful, yet risky. It was overshadowed almost instantly by louder demonic hits of the decade. But beneath the market noise, this supernatural mystery was one of the boldest studio attempts to explore possession, identity, and artistic obsession, all wrapped in a hypnotic visual tone that felt ahead of its time. The story follows a journalist who crosses paths with an aging concert pianist known for his eerie intensity. What begins as a harmless interview spirals into a supernatural nightmare when the journalist becomes entangled in a ritual that blends artistry with dark forces. The pianist believes he can escape death by transferring his essence into another body. Soon dreams distort reality. Loved ones grow distant, and the question becomes not whether evil is real, but whether it can wear the mask of ambition and genius without being recognized. Behind the scenes, the film struggled with studio expectations. Some executives feared it was too strange, too quiet, and too intellectual to compete with the rising wave of mainstream horror. There were whispered disagreements about the marketing campaign. Posters emphasized glamour, while trailers hinted at satanic themes, creating confusion and causing audiences to overlook its psychological depth. The era demanded simple thrills, while the Mephisto Waltz offered something far more unsettling. But the legacy of this film found life long after its theatrical run ended. Cult fans discovered its haunting imagery and praised its fearless approach to supernatural identity. Scholars later recognized it as a key stepping stone between traditional Gothic cinema and the more experimental horrors that followed. Today, the Mephisto Waltz lingers as a reminder that fear can be elegant, mysterious, and deeply personal. Its presence is a soft echo in horror history, inviting us to question how ambition can twist the soul. Number 12. Blood on Satan's Claw, 1971. Blood on Satan's Claw arrived during a changing era in horror. Folk tales were vanishing from screens, replaced by more modern terrors. Yet this eerie British creation resurfaced ancient fears with chilling confidence. Critics praised its atmosphere, but audiences drifting toward blockbuster entertainment barely noticed it. What remained was a haunting masterpiece hiding behind the noise of the decade. The film unfolds in a rural village where a strange corpse is discovered in a field. Soon, unsettling events ripple through the community. Strange visions plague the young. Whispers grow in the dark. A group of children becomes drawn to a mysterious force rising from the earth. There are rituals, secret gatherings, and a creeping sense that something old and hungry is awakening. Blood on Satan's Claw blends history and myth into a vivid, slow, rising horror that grows under your skin rather than leaping at you from the shadows. But here is the twist. The production was originally planned as an anthology with multiple folk stories tied together. Budget cuts forced the team to combine all the tales into a single narrative. This led to creative tension as scenes were rewritten during filming. Some actors reportedly struggled with the shifting script. The studio was unsure how to promote a horror film that did not resemble the rising wave of modern supernatural hits. As a result, it never received the push it needed. Despite being overlooked for years, the film found a second life. Modern audiences have embraced it as one of the defining works of British folk horror. Its influence can be seen in later films that revived the genre with new intensity. Blood on Satan's Claw stands today as a quiet echo of those older fears, reminding us that horror can be rooted in history and still feel frighteningly alive. It teaches us that forgotten terrors can rise again when the world least expects it. Number 11. The Devil's Reign, 1975. The Devil's Reign stormed into theaters with a cast that should have guaranteed success. It featured familiar faces, respected talent, and a concept steeped in supernatural dread. Yet the timing was unforgiving. Released at the height of blockbuster mania, it was overshadowed before audiences even had the chance to appreciate its eerie world of cults, curses, and spiritual corruption. The story follows a family trapped in a terrifying battle against a mysterious cult. The desert landscape becomes a haunting stage where rain does not fall from clouds, but from forces far darker. The cult seeks lost souls. Strange rituals unfold at night. People vanish and reappear with hollow eyes. The film blends occult imagery with a relentless sense of pursuit, creating tension that grows as the cult's power spreads across the silent wasteland. Behind the scenes, rumors swirled. Some said the production was rushed in an attempt to capitalize on the rising interest in supernatural stories. Others whispered that on-set conditions were harsh and unpredictable. There were disagreements about certain scenes and concerns that the final act might be too intense for mainstream viewers. When the film arrived, studios seemed unsure whether to push it as a cult thriller or a supernatural spectacle. That confusion weakened its release. Yet the legacy of The Devil's Reign proved surprisingly strong. Cult film fans embraced its surreal finale and unforgettable visual style. It became a staple of late-night television where curious viewers stumbled upon it by accident and found themselves unable to look away. Today, the film stands as a reminder that horror does not need massive budgets or perfect timing to survive. Its storm still echoes through horror history, urging modern audiences to look beyond the obvious hits and rediscover the strange forgotten nightmares of the 70s. Number 10. Burnt Offerings. 1976. Burnt Offerings entered the decade with an unsettling reputation. Some viewers called it daring, others found it too quiet compared to the loud horror trends rising in the 70s. It was a haunted house story without the frantic energy of mainstream hits. Yet beneath its calm surface lived a deeply chilling tale, one that whispered dread instead of shouting it, one that demanded patience and rewarded it with lasting unease. The film follows a family who moves into a massive old mansion for the summer. The deal seems too good to be true. A strange elderly woman lives upstairs and never leaves her room. The house feels alive. Objects shift, doors creak. Something watches from the shadows. Soon the peaceful vacation becomes a nightmare of psychological decay. The mother grows distant, the father becomes violent, and the child senses shapes in the dark. Burnt Offerings does not rely on sudden frights. Instead, its terror builds slowly like a cold presence, creeping into every corner. Behind the scenes, the production faced confusion from studio executives. Some believed the film was too subtle for an audience hungry for bigger supernatural thrills. Others argued that its strength was exactly in its restraint. The marketing department could not decide how to sell it. Posters hinted at gothic terror, while trailers emphasized character drama. This mixed messaging left viewers uncertain about what they were going to see. As a result, the film struggled to stand out in a decade dominated by blockbuster giants. But time has reshaped its legacy. Modern fans praise the slow burn tension, the emotional collapse of the characters, and the unforgettable final twist. Critics now see Burnt Offerings as a cornerstone of psychological haunted house cinema. It carries a lingering dread that grows stronger with each viewing. The film stands today as a warning that sometimes the scariest monsters are not hiding in the dark. Sometimes the house itself becomes the unseen force shaping fate and feeding on human weakness. It remains a lost yet powerful echo from a decade consumed by larger shadows. Number 9. Kill Baby Kill, 1971. Although Kill Baby Kill originally released earlier, its American resurgence in the early 70s placed it directly in the path of the blockbuster boom. Viewers discovered it too late. Mario Bava's masterpiece of gothic supernatural horror was overshadowed by louder, more modern releases. But those who found it felt its eerie beauty. It became a whispered legend among fans hunting for hidden cinematic treasures. The story unfolds in a cursed village, terrified by the spirit of a young girl whose presence can be felt in every alleyway. She appears at windows, watches from rooftops, and drags the living into her nightmare realm. A doctor arrives to investigate a mysterious death and soon discovers that the village hides a history soaked in tragedy. The deeper he goes, the stronger the spirit's grip becomes. Kill Baby Kill creates fear through images that feel like half-remembered dreams. A bouncing ball echoing down a hallway, a child staring from the darkness, a figure standing just out of reach. But here is the twist. The film reached American audiences during a time when studios were focused entirely on effects-driven horror. Gothic stories were seen as old-fashioned. Some distributors cut scenes to fit television schedules, while others released poor-quality prints that damaged the film's reputation. The rise of modern supernatural hits pulled attention away from Bava's more atmospheric approach. As a result, Kill Baby Kill never received the mainstream recognition it deserved. Behind the scenes, many creative decisions were rushed due to tight budgets. Sets were repurposed, costumes reused, and lighting setups improvised. Yet these limitations became strengths. They produced a dreamlike haze that modern filmmakers still admire. The film's legacy grew quietly through midnight screenings and cult gatherings. Today, Kill Baby Kill is celebrated as one of the most influential works in European supernatural cinema. Its haunting images continue to inspire directors around the world. It remains a reminder that fear often comes from what you sense, not what you see. Number 8. Psychic Killer, 1975. Psychic Killer entered theaters with little fanfare. It was not built to compete with the rising blockbusters that dominated the decade. Instead, it offered a strange merging of revenge thriller and supernatural mystery. Some viewers found it daring, while others dismissed it as too unusual for mainstream appeal. Yet, beneath its modest surface lies a story filled with eerie imagery and unsettling psychological twists. The film follows a man who gains the ability to leave his physical body after a traumatic event. Through this strange power, he begins targeting those he believes wronged him. His victims sense a presence they cannot see. Objects move on their own. Rooms grow cold. The killer walks unseen through the world, leaving fear in his wake. Psychic Killer uses its supernatural element not for spectacle, but for creeping tension. Each scene builds the desire to understand what drives a man to commit such otherworldly acts. Behind the scenes, the film faced uncertainty from studios. Some executives believed audiences would not be able to follow its blend of genres. Others argued that the supernatural revenge concept was ahead of its time. Production budgets were tight. Effects teams improvised with creative camera tricks and lighting to create the sensation of astral travel. The effort paid off visually, but marketing struggled to explain the film without revealing too much. It was overshadowed instantly by the arrival of larger horror releases backed by major studio support. In the years that followed, Psychic Killer found refuge in home video and late-night broadcasts. New viewers praised its psychological tension and its exploration of guilt, fear, and unseen violence. Lovers of cult cinema embraced its strange energy. Today, the film stands as a forgotten yet fascinating piece of 70s supernatural history. It asks a haunting question. If you could walk through the world without being seen, what part of yourself would rise to the surface? Number 7. Something Evil, 1972. Something Evil began as a modest television project, but quickly gained a reputation far beyond its small-screen origins. Directed by a young Steven Spielberg, it carried a strange aura. Viewers expected a typical TV movie. Instead, they found a rural nightmare filled with supernatural tension, but timing was unkind. With blockbuster cinema rising, audiences simply overlooked this quieter, unsettling tale. The film follows a couple who moves into a farmhouse surrounded by isolation. Strange symbols appear in the barn. A jar sealed with an unknown substance emits eerie sounds. The wife begins sensing an unseen presence that grows stronger with each passing night. Something Evil builds fear through suggestion and atmosphere. Every scene feels touched by cold air. Every shadow hides a silent threat. Spielberg uses minimal effects, relying instead on stillness and silence to create dread. Behind the scenes, the production faced tight schedules and limited resources. Some crew members claimed the script underwent constant adjustments, which created tension on set. Others recalled unexpected interruptions from weather that forced scenes to be improvised. Despite these challenges, the cast delivered performances that felt grounded and real, which only amplified the terror. But studios were unsure how to promote a supernatural TV film when theaters were exploding with massive blockbusters. Something Evil vanished quickly into obscurity. Its legacy, however, grew slowly. Fans of Spielberg later sought it out and discovered a story filled with early signs of his mastery of suspense. Scholars now examine it as a precursor to his later supernatural works. The film proves that terror can rise from simple elements: a whisper in the barn, a symbol carved into wood, a fear that grows inside the home. Something Evil stands today as a quiet reminder that even the greatest directors begin by exploring shadows before stepping into the spotlight. Number 6. The Nightcomers, 1971. The Nightcomers arrived with an unusual reputation. Starring Marlon Brando, it carried star power, yet its supernatural mystery was overshadowed by more explosive studio releases. Viewers expected a loud, terrifying story. Instead, they found a dark, atmospheric tale exploring corruption, innocence, and the unseen forces that twist human nature. It was too subtle for the blockbuster era and quietly slipped through the cracks. The film serves as a prequel to the famous story about a governess haunted by spirits. But instead of focusing on ghosts, it explores the psychological forces that create them. The story follows two children living in a secluded estate, overseen by a mysterious tutor played by Brando. His presence is charming, yet dangerous. The children grow attached to him and slowly begin to absorb his distorted view of the world. Strange events unfold. Innocence fades. The atmosphere grows thick with invisible tension. The Nightcomers suggest that the most frightening horrors are not supernatural beings, but the minds that shape them. Behind the scenes, the film faced its own challenges. Some producers felt nervous about the tone, believing it was too unconventional. There were creative disagreements about how dark the story should become. Studios were pushing films with clear thrills, while the Nightcomers offered quiet dread and psychological mystery. This disconnect led to a muted release, and critics did not know how to categorize its style. As a result, it never gained the recognition expected from a film with such a notable cast. Yet the legacy of the Nightcomers has endured. Modern audiences appreciate its slow-building tension and its exploration of childhood shaped by shadowy influences. Film scholars often revisit it for Brando's intense performance and its unsettling atmosphere. It now stands as a reminder that not all supernatural horror relies on ghosts. Sometimes the terror is already present inside the human heart, waiting for the right moment to surface. Number 5. The Legend of Hell House, 1973. The Legend of Hell House entered the decade with a fierce reputation. Critics called it intense, daring, and atmospheric, yet audiences drawn toward bigger, louder horror spectacles barely noticed it. At a time when supernatural cinema was shifting toward grand demonic stories, this film returned to the classic haunted mansion structure, but with a sharp psychological edge. It was overshadowed before it even had a chance to breathe, yet it remains one of the most chilling ghost stories ever filmed. The story follows a team of investigators sent to the infamous Belasco House, a mansion rumored to hold the most violent haunting in the world. They arrive with scientific tools, spiritual sensitivity, and personal doubts. But the house does not wait. Doors slam, rooms shake, and unseen hands press against the living. Each night the tension rises as voices echo through hallways and invisible forces push the investigators to the brink of madness. The Legend of Hell House builds its terror through suggestion mystery and slow psychological corrosion. It plays with the boundary between science and the supernatural, turning every belief into a weapon. Behind the scenes, the production faced creative clashes about tone. Some wanted a pure ghost story, others pushed for a more scientific approach. The script evolved during filming, which caused tension among cast and crew. Marketing teams struggled to place the film in a world suddenly dominated by massive supernatural blockbusters. Posters hinted at demonic thrill, while trailers promised scientific mystery. This confusion weakened its impact at the box office. Yet the legacy of this film has grown stronger with time. Modern viewers praise its oppressive atmosphere, its brilliant sound design, and its bold approach to psychological terror. The house itself feels alive, feeding on fear and doubt. Today, it stands as one of the defining haunted house stories of the decade. It reminds us that the most terrifying ghosts are not always the ones we see, but the ones that wait patiently in the quiet corners of forgotten rooms. Number 4. Let's Scare Jessica to Death, 1971. Let's Scare Jessica to Death arrived with a haunting reputation. Critics admired its dreamlike style, but mainstream audiences never connected with its quiet psychological horror. At a time when studios were chasing massive supernatural hits, this eerie, low-budget nightmare was pushed aside. Yet those who found it described the experience as unsettling, beautiful, and deeply sad. It became a whisper film, one that traveled slowly between horror fans searching for something different. The story follows Jessica, a woman recovering from emotional trauma, who moves to a rural farmhouse with her husband and friend. She hears voices in the lake. She sees figures in the woods. A mysterious woman appears at night with pale skin and silent footsteps. The townspeople treat Jessica with cold suspicion. Reality blurs. Madness grows. The film floats between supernatural suggestion and psychological collapse. Every scene feels like a breath held too long. Every sound carries a hidden meaning. Let's Scare. Jessica to Death does not rely on loud scares. Its horror rises. Like fog, slow, silent, and impossible to escape. Behind the scenes, the production faced budget limits. Scenes were improvised. Locations were chosen for cost rather than comfort. Cast and crew worked long hours in unpredictable weather. Some said the uncertainty added to the film's strange energy. But studios did not know how to promote such a quiet, atmospheric tale. The title suggested a chaotic thriller, while the film itself was a whisper of dread. Viewers expecting action left confused. As a result, the film disappeared in the noise of the blockbuster era. But the legacy of Let's Scare Jessica to Death is powerful. Modern fans call it one of the most underrated supernatural horrors of the 70s. Scholars praise its portrayal of mental fragility, its feminine perspective, and its haunting imagery. The story lingers long after the final scene. It remains a reminder that true fear often arrives softly, like a voice calling from the water, urging you to follow it into the dark. Number 3. The Other, 1972. The Other arrived during a time when psychological horror was fading and larger spectacle-driven stories were rising. It was praised for its intelligence and unsettling atmosphere, yet it struggled to stand against the growing wave of blockbuster dominance. Audiences were looking for bigger thrills. This quiet, haunting tale of childhood innocence twisted into terror was overlooked, but those who watched it felt its cold grip long after the credits rolled. The story centers on twin brothers living on a rural farm. One boy is gentle and loving. The other is unpredictable and cold. The family is struck by tragedy, and strange accidents begin to unfold. A toy lands in a coffin. A person falls into a well. A newborn is lost under mysterious circumstances. As fear spreads, the question grows heavier. Are these events caused by a supernatural force or by a child whose innocence has vanished? The Other weaves dread through simple moments, sunlit fields, quiet rooms, and the eerie silence between siblings. Behind the scenes, the film faced a challenge that followed it for years. Studios struggled to decide whether it was a supernatural thriller or a psychological drama. Marketing leaned toward sensational horror, which misled audiences. Critics loved the atmosphere, but casual viewers expecting a loud haunting felt confused. The rise of major horror hits pushed The Other deeper into the shadows. It never received the spotlight its craftsmanship deserved. Yet today, The Other is often praised as one of the most intelligent horror films of the decade. Its quiet horror sneaks into the heart, rather than jolting the nerves. Scholars admire its portrayal of childhood shaped by trauma and unseen forces. Film enthusiasts celebrate its ambiguity and emotional depth. The Other endures as a reminder that horror does not need spectacle. Sometimes it grows in the soft light of a summer afternoon, where innocence hides darkness just beneath the surface. Number 2. The Sentinel, 1977. The Sentinel stormed into the late 70s with bold imagery, chilling atmosphere, and a cast filled with recognizable faces. Yet, despite its ambition, the film was immediately overshadowed by huge releases that dominated theaters. It carried the reputation of a daring supernatural thriller, but audiences distracted by blockbuster excitement never embraced its unsettling vision. The Sentinel became a buried treasure, waiting decades for rediscovery. The story follows a young model who moves into a quiet New York apartment building. She soon discovers odd neighbors who appear and disappear without warning. Strange noises echo from the walls. A blind priest sits motionless on the top floor, watching the city through lifeless eyes. As the mystery deepens, she uncovers a terrifying truth. The building is a gateway, a place where forces fight to contain or unleash unimaginable darkness. The film blends urban dread with ancient lore, creating a chilling atmosphere that grows with every step through its shadow-filled hallways. Behind the scenes, The Sentinel faced controversy. Some felt its religious themes were too intense. Others argued that the frightening imagery was too disturbing for mainstream viewers. There were disagreements about edits and rumors of scenes being trimmed for release. Marketing departments struggled again to find balance. Posters highlighted glamour, while trailers emphasized supernatural horror, leaving audiences unsure of what to expect. Despite these challenges, the legacy of The Sentinel has strengthened over time. Modern viewers praise its bold approach, its relentless atmosphere, and its unforgettable finale. It is now considered an essential supernatural film from the era. A story that reminds us that fear often hides behind the walls of ordinary places, waiting to reveal itself when the world grows quiet. Number 1. The Haunting of Julia, 1977. The Haunting of Julia arrived with quiet elegance. It was not loud or sensational. It did not chase the trends of the decade. Instead, it delivered a deeply emotional supernatural tale grounded in grief, trauma, and the ghostly echoes of childhood. But in the shadow of enormous blockbuster dominance, it vanished almost instantly. Only years later did viewers realize they had missed one of the most haunting films of the decade. The story follows Julia, a woman shattered by the loss of her daughter. She moves into a new home hoping to escape her pain, but the past follows her into every room. She hears footsteps behind her. She sees glimpses of a child standing at the edge of the frame. Neighbors speak in half-truths. Old secrets rise from the shadows. The haunting of Julia builds its terror slowly through emotional weight instead of spectacle. The haunting is not simply a spirit, it is grief made visible, reaching through the walls and into Julia's fragile mind. Behind the scenes, the film struggled to find a clear promotional identity. Some called it a drama, others insisted it was pure supernatural horror. Marketing teams could not decide how to present it. It was overshadowed by louder films offering demons, explosions, and big studio budgets. Critics admired it, but audiences never had the opportunity to discover its quiet brilliance. Today, the legacy of The Haunting of Julia is undeniable. It is praised for its atmosphere, its haunting imagery, and its emotional depth. Fans call it one of the most overlooked supernatural masterpieces of the 70s. It reminds us that true terror often grows from lost memory and the shadows we refuse to confront. The film stands as a testament to the power of subtle horror, whispering across decades for those willing to listen. The 70s blockbuster boom buried countless supernatural treasures, yet their echoes never truly faded. These 15 films reveal how fear can take many shapes, quiet psychological slow rising, or rooted in grief and mystery. Like the video, subscribe for deeper cinematic explorations, and join us as we continue illuminating the shadows of film history.